what really needs to happen with what I tend to call encapsulated child or inner child, same thing. Some people call it ego state work, doesn't matter what label you put on it. But the
Mhm.
way I work with it is, first of all, to have a person see if they can access, if they can go back from the adult self to see the younger self, and in one trauma at a time. So there might be something that happened at 5 and you don't want to get them all on board at the same time. You want to be working one event. And sometimes, like this morning I worked with someone, it was from a whole span of years. So sometimes I'll be saying, well, from 3 to 10 when this happened, or from, 5 to 17, or whatever it is. But you're just seeing if they can connect to that inner state, that traumatized state usually, and see what that age is holding, because they, again, it gets stopped in time, and then see if you can start building a relationship between the mature adult self and the child self. So there's a compassionate, hopefully supportive relationship eventually,
Mhm.
and then also really be seeing what that child needed or what emotions needed to be felt that nobody was there for. And the inner child was usually alone or wasn't well supported when the trauma happened, because that's why it gets stuck, right?
Right.
If you
Yeah.
have a lot of support, sometimes you have a terrible trauma, but you have such great support, it doesn't end up being stuck in time. It ends up getting processed. But so
Mhm.
often, what happens, especially with sexual abuse or things that have kind of a taboo around them to talk about, get really stuck. And so you were trying to start a dialogue, but sometimes I ask questions like, well, what is that little boy or that little girl feeling? What is that 8-year-old wanting to let you know? Uh, that must have been horrible. What you told me what happened is really, really scary and was so unfair. What are some of the things that they might want? Now, sometimes I pretty much can tell what somebody would need, like they were glaringly lacking support. So I'll
Mhm.
immediately say, well, I just wonder if any time in your life, and it can be today or even a movie you saw or a book you read, have you had experience with someone that was really a competent protector, somebody that knew how to have someone's back and would really
Mhm.
step up? They wouldn't just have good intentions, but they would take action, the appropriate action. And I import that person. Now sometimes it's the person's adult self, like they would be that person. Sometimes it's me as the therapist. And so often it's like a mentor they had in college or somebody they respect. And they bring that person in. And I said, now what would you see this competent protector do or say for you at that age? And then they get to see somebody actually doing the right thing, but they're creating how that happens. I might
Right.
menu a few things like, would they get you out of there? Would they duke it out with the perpetrator? Would they say stop and you're not ever going to touch this kid again? What would they do? So sometimes I menu it and then the person goes, no, they wouldn't do that. They would do this, which is great. I'm trying to get to what they need the person to do. And then
Yeah.
we kind of play that out and like, what's it feel? What happens in your body? And very often there's an emotional reaction.
Mhm.
Um, and there's just more communication. It's so brave of these inner children to show up. And I try to help the adult self that sometimes is embarrassed by what happened or doesn't want to
Mhm.
acknowledge it. I said, look how courageous this part of you is that's been struggling and trapped in this experience. And they're talking to you and they're showing you what feelings they need to have support to feel. And they're feeling them and you're allowing it. And I'm just trying to kind of navigate and negotiate a good relationship, ultimately intrapsychically, because like IFS says, internal family systems, the inner child has the adult self 24/7. They have the therapist maybe
Right.
1 hour a week or 1 hour every 2 weeks. But so you want to make sure you're building that intrapsychic resource, as well as I believe that the external resources can be helpful too. So I
Mhm.
do everything. I bring it all in. If we look to the wisdom of memory reconsolidation, is when you access with a threatening wounding experience, that memory comes up. It's been encoded all over the brain. It comes up, and you're inserting all these positive experiences. And I always say to clients, I know this didn't happen in reality when you were a kid. You didn't have this support,
Right.
but just see what difference it makes. But when you bring that memory back in, it will be uh, contaminated in a good way with the
Yeah.
corrective experiences, the experience of a competent protector, the experience of being able to have a voice and say what happened, the experience of being able to feel your feelings and being supported because the therapist is there. They're not alone this time. That makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
And then the brain over time and sometimes immediately will always choose the more adaptive response. We're wired for that. So
Mhm.
you're using again the physiology we know and understand to support the healing process. And it makes it so much more efficient.